Ruthie from FS Securities. We are an education and information firm on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. And every Monday morning I go through what happened globally around the world and try to forecast what we may see this coming week. I'll show you how investors and traders can make money on our stock market and the global market. I'll show you what is hot and what is not, what you should hold and what you should fold. And by the way, if you have any particular feedback, we would love to hear from you. Well, the share market is set to start the week on a negative footing, and the futures, as you can see here, showing that the market most likely will open down 1.3%, 78 points at the start of trading. But remember, on Friday the market was almost steady, 6 points higher, and the previous 2 days on Wednesday the market was up 7 points. On Thursday the market was down 113 points. So really, if you look at the last 3 days, we are on the downside. I'll show you the chart in a minute for the American market as well as our market. Well, the Dow on Saturday morning was down 209 points, 0.8%, but you can see it had 2 good days prior to that. That's Thursday morning, Friday morning and Saturday morning. So the market is still on the upside for the Dow. The S&P 500, which is the broader index, was down 17 points, 0.6%, still above the 3,000. Has been over the 3,000 for quite a while. It had 2 beautiful days prior to Saturday morning. The Nasdaq continues to zoom up, almost steady but 3 points higher. It's still green. In Europe, the StoXX 50 index, which comprises most major European markets, was up 0.6%. In London, the FTSE was up 1.1%. In Germany, the DAX was up 0.4%. And in Japan, the Nikkei index on Friday was up 0.6%. In China, the Shanghai index was up 1.3%. And as I mentioned, our market on Friday was up 6 points, almost steady. But over the last 3 days, we are down. Okay, now gold had a good day on Saturday morning, Friday night, 22 points higher, that's US per ounce. Silver was up 35 cents, nearly 2%. Silver continues to go higher day after day, but gold had actually a drop, $44 several days before. By the way, this is actually the weekly as well, so remember that we compare week for week. Yeah, we have a different platform and different presentation every morning from Tuesday to Friday, but every Monday morning I go from week to week. Okay, now in terms of the Australian dollar, 68.35 US cents, 61.1 euro cents, 55.3 British pence, and 106 New Zealand. Okay, and now looking at what happened week on week. What we like to do is compare what happened over the full week. As you can see, those 2 columns here in points and percentage. Then we like to combine last week with the week before and have a combined data. So for instance, the Dow was up 1% last week overall, but when you put the 2 weeks together, you find that the Dow was down 4.6% over 2 weeks. So I wouldn't take much notice of the 1% rise last week when you look at the 2 weeks. But the Nasdaq, yes, 3.7% last week, but still, even though it was a negative 2 weeks ago, it was still over 2 weeks, was still 1.4% rise. And the S&P 500 over 2 weeks down 3%. Now the US dollar over 2 weeks was slightly up. The Australian dollar was down 2% over 2 weeks. So down 0.6% last week and 1.3% down the week before, putting the 2 weeks together as nearly 2% down. The euro 1% down, the Japanese yen or the American dollar versus Japanese yen. So there is a strength in Japanese yen, and sterling had a good drop of 2.5%. In terms of gold, if you look at 2 weeks combined, nearly $70 per ounce. Silver 25 cents, 1.4%. West Texas crude oil 1.2%. Natural gas down 7%. And if you're interested to trade any of these other commodities such as coffee, orange juice, corn, soybeans, all you have to do is call us and we'll talk to you about them. Now the Dow, this is 2 weeks ago, and that's last week. You can see 2 weeks ago the market was still hovering above the 21 week moving average, and you look at it still above it. That's the 21. And what we can see here is that the 50-week moving average is actually approaching the 100 and wants to cross above it, which is actually, for the long term, it is actually bullish. But still below the 200, those candles are still below the 200-day moving average. So that's still negative. In terms of parabolic stop and reverse, those dots, red dots above the candles, that's bearish. The stochastic happened to be well below the 50% line. The blue line was below the red line. But what we see here, by the way, it's red candle and very high volume. So that's actually bearish for that particular period. Now looking at our mechanical system, and you can see here that's week on week and that's day on day. So that's they're all the same at the end of the week, the same end of the day. However, when you put end of the day on Friday or Saturday morning, end of the day on Thursday morning, end of the day Wednesday morning, you can compare 3 days in a row, and that's week by week, week over week. So the Nasdaq, if you want to trade the Nasdaq with the futures or CFDs or options, obviously you are still on the uptrend. However, if you are trading the Dow Jones or the broader S&P 500, you really want to be very careful because it's neutral. In terms of crude oil, after several days of neutral, we had a good rise in the crude oil, and the Australian dollar, if you are a very aggressive trader, day on day trading, you are bearish. However, for the investor, which is a longer term, we are bullish on the Australian dollar. That's because, remember, the indicators down here that predicts the bull chart, the bull trend, it looks at the monthly and the weekly. So you really have a slow change in the indicators. So, but however, there has been a change from one day to another. So that's actually the change over 1 day is actually very positive. We're trading around the 68 US cents. So it's very possible we might go a bit higher. Again, that depends on the American dollar, and the American dollar is bullish. So remember, bullish here. So if you are a day trader, you may want to consider a bearish position on the Australian dollar versus the US. Now, as far as our the Australian ASX 200 index, you can see here that's the weekly and that's the daily. And week on week, you can see the stochastic is bullish. The parabolic stop and reverse is bullish for our market. Our candle happens to be above the 21 period moving average, which is good. Here, what you see here on the daily, you've got the 9-day moving average above the 21, bullish. Bullish, I mean it's actually uptrend. Bearish, downtrend. And the parabolic stop and reverse, shown here by the red dots, happen to be below the candles, that's bullish. The stochastic for our market, bullish, and we will change, of course, if at the end of today or tomorrow, because we look at the daily chart on a daily basis and we have the indicators coming from the chart. We have 8 indicators we look at on different time frame. For the investor, we look at the monthly and the weekly. For the trader, we look at the daily and the weekly. And for the very aggressive trader, we look at daily and hourly. So if you are trading within the day, obviously we look at the day versus hourly. And hourly can say 4 hours or maybe 2 hours or 1 hour, depends on how aggressive you are. And our market, you can see here the closing bell, our market for the full week was up 1.6%. You can see here, that's 95 points. It closed at 5,943. And over the full 2 weeks, the ASX was down 0.9%. Let's call that down 1%. That's 2 weeks combined. And when our market, by the way, is made up to a great extent by 2 major sectors, the financial and the materials. I've highlighted them here. And last week, you can see that the financial was up, the banks were up. However, the materials, which means iron ore, stocks like BHP, Rio, Fortescue, was down 1.7%, and over 2 weeks. So you can see here that maybe China is not buying as much iron ore from us, but for some reason. So we got here an indication that material was down 3% and the financial was down nearly 2% and the overall market was down by 1%. Looking at our stocks, on the blue side, going down this area here, well, to start with the sectors, before I go to the stocks, across all sectors, the best sectors last week from our technical analysis, information technology was up 7%. Here we are, information technology up 7%, 2 weeks combined, 5% up. Energy, mid-cap and communication were all above nearly 3%. Worst sectors were metal, materials, and so actually materials down, metal and mining down, gold down, all nearly 2% or above. Now we go to the stocks, across the top stocks, the best performing stock over the full week. TPM, which is TPG, Intercommunication Company, 11% up last week, 15% 2 weeks in a row together. So TPG is actually something that you may want to have a look at. We might put a paper on TPG and see whether we've missed TPG or we still got some movement in TPG. And by the way, QBE was also up 9%, but however over 2 weeks was down 0.3%. So I guess you need to actually take all this into consideration. Okay, well, the worst performing stock was BHP, Rio. BHP was down 3% over 2 weeks, most of it last week. Rio, 2.3%, most of it last week. We don't have Fortescue on this list, but I would say Fortescue would have actually suffered the same consequence. So again, you want to actually have a look at the raw material and see why those stocks are actually going down. Now looking at our sectors with our mechanical system, this is on Saturday morning and that's the Saturday before. So we started last week with these indicators. We said gold was down, and towards the end of the week we continue to be bearish on gold. However, we've seen that over the full week gold was up nearly 65, over 2 weeks $67. So again, that's for the very aggressive trader, but based on day by day. So you may see that the majority of the increase may happen early in the week, and then we see the down later on. But we've seen most of the sectors bullish for the conservative trader and the very aggressive trader. And you can see here that's Wednesday morning, or I'll say Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. So again, we have those indicators, and sometimes you need to know that the indicators sometimes are lagging and take more time to change. Depends whether you are an investor and you don't see any change during the week, because the investor look at the monthly and the weekly. However, the very aggressive trader, they can change from one day to another. As you can see here, the all ordinary change from bullish for the very aggressive trader to bearish for one day and then bullish the following day. And the same thing happens here. So that's what actually drives us and drives our recommendation. In terms of stocks, this morning we can see here that we are bearish on the banks and the materials. ANZ, that's for the very aggressive trader. If you are an investor, neutral, 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 except for RIA appears to be bullish for the investor and has been for several days. TPM, which is TPG, has been strong for several days, actually the whole week and even the week before. So of all the stocks and all the recommendations we've made, the one that the brilliant stock that we have recommended was TPG, and as you can see the last 2 weeks TPG was up 16%. So you'll have made some really good profit if you're trading CFDs or options. Apart from that, you can see here that we've gone from very, very bullish for most of the stocks, with the exception of QBE, which continues to be bearish, or a small change here for QBE, and bearish for TCL, Transurban and Telstra, bearish, neutral, and then bullish for TCL, that's Transurban, on at the end of the week. That's this morning. All right, well, we like to look at volume, and you can see here that the volume has been great on Friday. Even though, you know, the market was down on Friday, well, we've seen, going back here, the XJR, sorry, was up 6 points, 0.1%, and the volume was quite a bit, and 38% of all the stocks advanced and 22% declined. Obviously, you need to actually sit down and look at those slides and start to memorize what you've seen and start to build a strategy based on the information. Now, I have to agree that some of the information is conflicting, because some of the indicators are lagging, some of the indicators are leading, and of course not all the indicators are actually accurate if you don't have a comprehensive trend. Our indicators work beautifully, like 80-90% probability of success when there is a massive trend, and you pick up the trend from the start, and hopefully the trend will continue, and obviously you make some money, until we miss out on the penthouse, because we don't know where the penthouse is. But on the way down, you start to realize that the trend is no longer your friend, because as you know, the trend is your friend, but we don't know where is the end. So you need to always be careful that the trend is your friend until the end, and the end can be predicted more or less when you look at charts and you look at resistance and support, you look at Fibonacci retracement, you look at other indicators, but nothing works 100% of the time. You need to be aware of that. Now, in terms of actual situations, what you see here, the company that were most active 2 weeks ago, at the end of the 2 weeks ago, and that's what we've seen on Saturday morning. So on Saturday morning, we've gone through and we wanted to know which company on Friday had actually a major increase in the price. And you can see this company here split it, went up by 7%. Saracen Minerals, 3.5%. Mesoblast, we're trading Mesoblast for some of our clients. And we mentioned Transurban, 3%, Flight Centre, Crown, CSL, JB Hi-Fi, All Search, Woolworths, and so on. Again, those slides will be on our website in a few minutes' time. Okay, we also like to go through and scan the market on a weekly and daily to see which stock had extra volume above the average volume over 50 weeks or 50 period, depends on whether you're looking at weekly and daily. So for instance here, this company Wesfarmers, of course we know Wesfarmers, if you look at 50 weeks moving average on the volume was nearly 2 million transactions per week. Well, last week we've seen nearly 26 million and the price was up 1.6%. Amcor had nearly doubled the volume over the full week and had a price increase of 6.6. So we really start to look at those companies and say, well, which one shall we trade? Transurban, 6.8%, and instead of 31 million transactions per week average, last week was 46.2 million transactions. So higher volume, higher price necessitate a further investigation. Nothing on the bearish side for the top 50. However, if you look at the mid caps, Infigen, we are trading Infigen, and last week it was up by 12.8%. And the volume, look at the volume. But then there is a company that is actually taking over Infigen. And by the way, there are two companies fighting over Infigen. So we don't know whether there will be another offer better than the last two. Hub24, Collins Food, price increase 5.3%, and the volume was up 58%, nearly 1.5 times. And all these companies are worth looking at. Now on the daily side, GPT was slightly up. The volume wasn't really great. On the mid cap, Bellevue Gold continues to zoom up and up and up and up and up. Again, it appears over and over. The price was up 461%. The volume was nearly 3 times the average daily volume. On the downside, Main Pharma was 2.7% down, nearly double the volume. Tessel Group, G8 Education, and so on. So talk to us or look at the website and you'll have all this information on the website shortly. In terms of 52-week high and low, these companies actually generated a new high over the last 52 weeks. So you can see here that Caprice Resources, the last was 18 cents. There's been a change of nearly 3 cents, 16%, and the volume. All these companies reached 52-week highs. On the low side, all these companies have had the lowest price during the last 52 weeks. So maybe it's worthwhile looking at those companies as well. There is a lot of information here, so I mean you need to be aware of what's going on. In terms of companies that are going to go ex-state, well, today Harvey Norman is giving you 6 cents, but look at the yield, 9.3% for Harvey Norman. If you bought the shares last week, you are actually getting nearly 9.3% return on your money. But of course, the price of the shares will drop by 6 cents. And hopefully in the next few weeks, it will really pick up again. Premier Investment is at the end of July, so nothing really other than Harvey Norman and Select Harvest. No, that was last week. Okay, in terms of our CFD trading, we're not doing too well at the moment. You can see here the losses. NZ Bank, we are $99 loss. Flexi Group, $165 loss. Infigen, I told you we're trading Infigen, $30 profit. Reject Shop, $82 profit. And Zip, $82 loss. Okay, in terms of other than that, remember that everything we said, the presentation was prepared for general information only, not for personal advice. So it's general information only and did not take into account your investment objectives, financial situation. We don't know your financial situation or financial circumstances. And before you take any action, please consult with your professional advisor, or you can talk to us directly. At FS Securities, our trading decisions are based on technical analysis. And technical analysis will tell you if there is a trend, and you cannot forget the fundamental. And remember, again, the trend is your friend until the end. And the trend is apparent and can be seen obviously on the chart. And then you can start to pick up some signals about where for the time frame that you're looking at, maybe there is a change in direction, and maybe you hit a resistance or you hit a support. So you need to be aware of that. And of course, you need to know your risk appetite, because there is a risk. Every person who trades, whether you are an investor or a trader, these days there is risk in trading. So if you have any questions, these are our details. So you can send me an email on this email address, or you can talk to me on my mobile. I'm available 7 days a week, at least 10 hours every day. If you're ringing from overseas, you put 61 first. That's the country code, 61. You don't need the 0, and that's my mobile phone number. I will be always available to talk to you. And finally, happy trading. I hope you make some money this week, and remember,